Well, hey there guys, and today we're just going to talk about some tips that you can use around the home to try and avoid pain in the side of the hip. Pain in the side of the hip is this pain we're talking about here, and it's really common, and it's also known as bursitis and tendon tearing, and there's all sorts of other names, but it's a really debilitating condition. And so here's some tips you can use around the house and through your day-to-day function to minimise your pain. The first tip is sitting cross-legged. So if you're sitting into a chair, really try to avoid this position where you're sitting cross-legged. This seems to be a really provocative position for pain in the side of the hip. You'll notice that when you stand up out of that position, it's quite sore and stiff and painful to get going. So you need to really avoid sitting with cross-legged in a cross-legged position for prolonged periods. The second thing I want you to really try to do is minimise the amount of hip bend that you sit with. So if I turn my chair side on, what you want to make sure of is that your hips aren't bent too much, and that really means that the height of your knee shouldn't be higher than the height of your hip. So perhaps get even a pillow or a towel or something that elevates your bottom so that your knees sit below the level of your hip. So that's number two. The third one is sleeping. So for this we're just going to use the bed. So with sleeping, you'll often find that when you lie down on the bed, there's two problems. Lying directly on the sore hip can be a real issue, but also letting the hip or the leg hang over to the side can be a real nightmare as well. So you're almost caught between a rock and a hard place. You can't lie on it and you can't let your leg fall over the side. So my tip for that is to get a nice thick pillow, place it between your knees, and make sure that the height of your knee is higher than the hip. So we should see you effectively in this position here. You don't want your knee to drop lower than the height of your hip, and so this position here is going to be really provocative. And for the hip underneath, a soft bed's always a good idea, but you can also place a pillow underneath the hip and try to sleep like that. So pillow under the hip, pillow between the knees. And the last tip is walking. Pain in the side of the hip is usually provoked with lots of prolonged periods of walking. So where possible, try and stay off your feet. If you'd like to exercise, using a bike's a much better way to go because it'll be far less provocative. And so you should find that really improves your hip pain on a day-to-day basis. Thanks.